Sometimes when opportunity is just staring at you in the face, you gotta grab it. I was out for a drive, came across a nice trail, and I don't know, just had this magic moment of catching in my head where, hey, I haven't run those miles I need to run. There's a lovely trail right there. Why not get on the trail and run? And so, it's that beautiful moment of seeing something on the side of the road and having enough space to safely brake and just seize on that opportunity is pretty nice. And then when I got to the trailhead, there was another dude running, and I asked him, hey, you know how many miles the loop is? And he goes, I don't even know what loop's around. I was like, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta get that work in. Don't need to know everything about what's going on. And you just get in there and do it. So that's part of the beauty of running. A little bit of that community, that fresh air, outdoor enjoyment. Anyway, last run, I attempted to film just some musings on a few concepts, and well, I realized halfway through that my GoPro was off, but I had my phone on me, so I finished the second half of it with my phone. So I might splice some of that in. See, this is why we go with backups, because when one piece of equipment fails, it's good to continue on in in the execution of purpose by virtue of reserve equipment. And so carry on. The other component of some of my consideration is the fact that you can think of purpose as intention or determination, right? So to have purpose is also to be determined. It is also to be intentional. And we think a lot about intentionality as an aim that guides action. So thus, intentionality is less of a stagnant thing. This boulder, I'm passing it again, can have purpose in its stillness. Not that stillness is not an action, but I think it is the inanimate portion of it. It's most relevant here. Even so, as a boulder is shaped by flow of air, flow of water, even the flow of solids past it, and the resulting collisions might shape an inanimate object, but is there intentionality in that? Perhaps somewhere. Perhaps. But the other thing about intention, being intentional, setting intention, that is an action. And I think it leads me to this place where I sometimes get stuck, in the place of meta-intentionality. That is, having an intention to set an intention, being stuck there without satisfaction, or at least taking finality in such an intention as to continue with the associated action. When we come back to purpose and determination, in that this wonderful concept introduced to me by my good friend and brother Quest the Conduit, where in life you would do well to hold on to your non-negotiable, unalterable terms. That is nuts. And to that end, negotiation implies dialogue. And you can certainly have a one-party dialogue, as I am right now, though I have you as a hypothetical viewer or observer. When it comes to unalterable terms, to alter a term can be unilateral. The enforcement of such terms against parties which may seek to, again, alter or violate them is a separate thing, but when you enter into the realm of non-negotiation, you then pick up that power, that unilateral power over alteration. It's truly special, quite a blessing. In a way, though, referring to those self-negotiations and entering upon that which is unalterable, you can see the bifurcation of the self into soul and ego. The ego frequently comes out to play in the realm of negotiation with self and other. However, by retiring from negotiation, you give rise to perhaps acceptance or disregard for whatever terms were left on the table. And though you've ceased attempts to cooperatively alter those terms, you can still retain between ego and soul a commitment, a covenant, contract, such that soul tells ego what is truly unalterable. I'm not sure if that's a strictly unilateral flow of control. However, in my experience, that architecture has been useful for understanding how to make a way in the world. So, have the respect to know when your non-negotiable terms are threatened to be violated. Cultivate the presence to recuse yourself from discussions with others or internally when truly alteration is intolerable with respect to your purpose. If you can retain that intentionality, I believe you've set yourself on a fast course towards holding the world towards an aim, towards a vision. Whether that's to avert a crash course or to align with it. That's a subject of intention and your particular purpose. I think there's also an interesting debacle where purpose and intention between ego and soul conflict. And that is why so much of our society is predicated upon, and frankly, achieves excellence and derives both comedy and tragedy in the context of conflict resolution. And something that I say rather often to anybody who happens to call me on the phone while I'm running or go on a run with me, the wisdom that I've received is, in most cases, most of your distance running training should be done at a cadence where you can speak in full sentences. And I'm even catching myself now having to gasp mid-sentence. So it's like, dang, I gotta slow up. Even though it's a pace that felt good, a pace that I think might look good. You gotta stick to the principles you've been given by those who have achieved the success you're looking to achieve. In any case, the subject of discussion that I'd like to, subject of monologue that I'd like to get into first is purpose. And a purpose is defined as the object towards which one strives. And when it comes to running, people first think, well, what do you run for? Most people run when they want to get away from something. But even when you're running to get away from something, you're also running to safety, right? How often do you encounter things that you conceive of yourself as running towards in sports, right? You run to score. You might run to the finish line if it's a race. You might run to a loved one you haven't seen in a while. You might even run to the device of your dreams on Black Friday. Or maybe that's a thing of the past. But in any case, purpose is about that direction and about that motion, generally. Right? Because it can also be defined as something for which something exists. Funny, when I recorded this last time, there was a boulder right in front of me. Here there's another boulder. And it reminds me that boulders have purpose. They can be placed with purpose by the elements, by humans. They can be molded and sculpted with purpose, whether for signal or aesthetic in their form. How's it going? And what's more, in an object, you can really see the purpose in stillness. And stillness is not just not moving. Stillness can also be steadiness, a lack of jitter. And in that, I don't know, I really am kind of fascinated by what these inanimate objects can show us. The other thing, it doesn't really seem like it is the purpose of any object to simply be owned. Much less does it seem like the purpose of any individual to be an owner. And there's this alternative notion that I'm fond of stewardship, where when you think of possession of assets, especially assets that are for commerce, assets that are impermanent, which one might argue is all of them, then what does it really mean to own them if they're only to be disposed of and passed on? And what's funny, keeping on this etymological wave, another thing that I was fascinated by was I was looking at the etymology of the word cheat. And what I realized is, in terms of the notion of cheating on someone in the English language, that connotation may be less than a century old. And I also noticed in its usage that it seemed to be relatively prevalent, again, outside of that context of infidelity in relationships, more along the lines of cheating in competition and other kinds of collaboration. That perspective showed me that, really, oddly, in the early 20th century, as the infidelity usage was rising, the usage of the word cheat, generally speaking, was actually declining. And then for whatever reason, somewhere around the 80s, perhaps the fall of communism in many respects, although these are English language phenomena, the charts show that the usage of the word cheat skyrocketed. Now, how does this connect back to purpose and ownership and stewardship? Well, the etymology of cheat actually pops up from the French concept of law covering the recovery of goods and assets, either through an estate or mainly back to the government. However, the agents in charge of executing those requirements and responsibilities were known for unsavory tactics, such that they gave rise to a word synonymous with their title, occupation, or job requirements, such that it is now what we understand as the notion of being a cheat, or to cheat as an action. So yeah, connection between ownership, stewardship, and cheating. Thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, back to purpose. It's also taken as synonymous with intention and determination. Determination is interesting because it connotes an element of judgment, right? You have to determine something. What is the value? Yes or no? And when it pertains to action, which again we say purpose is grounded in action, then it is a decision to act. That is determination. And the speed and effectiveness of that decision making and the commitment to that decision making gives rise to determination. Although, interestingly, it is related to purpose. Doing something with a purpose, moving with a purpose, moving with determination. All the same. As is running. Then I get to the concept of intention. Also commonly taken as synonymous with purpose. But intention is specifically along the lines of that guidance, that direction, the vector, the orientation which action is grounded upon. What's interesting about intention is that one can end up stuck in a space of meta intention. That is, the intention behind an intention. What is your intention in setting out to understand your purpose? What is your intention in craving a sentiment of greater determination in your life? What is your intention in setting an intention? Where do we find the ground truth? The bedrock upon which those notions lay. There comes in a concept that I value from a friend of mine named Quest the Conduit, who introduced me to the notion of non-negotiable, unalterable terms, or nuts. And so here's the thing: if you hold on to your nuts, if you hold on to your non-negotiable, unalterable terms, people may begin to look at you as if you are nuts. How's it going?